my email list. I just made a big announcement today about me going nationwide and across all companies when it comes to title rep coaching. So if you are a title rep, number one, or number two, if you're a real estate agent that wishes you had a title rep that could be more helpful, then stay tuned for more details. Super excited about that. Back to the purpose of today's episode, guys, is that overcoming adversity as a real estate agent is essential for you to, number one, having a good business, number two, having a good life. Let's be honest. If there were no adversity, they could get any chump in there to do your job and they wouldn't be paid very well because there'd be so many people willing to do it. The reality is, because it is difficult and challenging and there is adversity, most people don't want to do it. Therefore, they have to pay people better to do it. I mean, it's just pure economics, right? Economics 101. Now, how do you overcome it? Okay, I'm going to give you 3 steps today to overcoming. There we go. 3 steps to overcoming adversity. Because as you learn how to do this, you will find out how much more you love your business and your life. Okay, so let me give you this metaphor before we start. My daughter, who's 5 years old, is a little pistol. Let me tell you what. She's the youngest of 6 kids, and she is dynamite. And at any given point, she is telling her older siblings what to do and where to go. And she's quite funny. And when she decided that she was going to ride a bike, man, it was inspiring. And I can say this about all my kids, but because she's the youngest, it's the most prominent in my mind. But she would smack into curbs, she would fall down, and she just wouldn't give up. She would not give up. And the thing that I learned about this and riding a bike in general, which is always easier to learn the lesson when you're not on the bike yourself, but is that the more that she was going forward and the faster she was going, the less likely she would fall, right? The more control she had, up to a certain point, of course. Now, that lesson applies to us as well. First and foremost, the overarching principle of everything that I'm going to share with you today is that if you are not in momentum, if you don't have enough going on, then molehills turn into mountains. And you simply don't have enough inertia and momentum and movement to get past the little bumps. So it becomes essential to realize that and accept the fact that man, if I'm really discouraged by this thing that happened, this deal that fell apart, this client, this review, whatever, it's probably because you're not thinking big enough. Now, that could be a plug for what I do, but the reality is it's true. If you had lots of transactions, losing one is not the end of the day. If you have one and you lose it, you're in trouble. So getting in momentum, getting the wheels spinning faster, getting your feet to move faster is such a critical component of you overcoming adversity. It's just forward movement solves a lot of problems. But how do we do that when we feel like we're on the ground and we got a scraped knee or we just ran into a curb, right? Well, here's the 3 principles. Point number 1 is that we like to live in the past and or even the present, where it's comfortable here and our subconscious mind is trained to help us to feel comfortable here, right? It's designed to say, oh, that happened in the past, that was bad, that was scary, so be careful of that in the future, right? So we tend oftentimes to be looking back instead of looking forward. So here's some simple tactics that I learned from a mentor of mine, someone who I coach directly with. Some of you know the name, Grant Cardone, which was every day he gets up and writes his goals before he gets started. Every night before he goes to bed, he writes his goals before he gets started. Now, you may not like Grant Cardone's personality. There's many people that fall into that category. But my guess is you'd probably change his financial situation for yours, right? That being a billionaire isn't that bad. Now, maybe you don't want to be a billionaire, but you get the point, is that there's something to that, right? Now, beginning and end of day. Now, here's the part that separates him from most other people. Anytime during the day that he had a down moment, something happened that just discouraged him, like he fell down on his bike, right? Not literally, but metaphorically, he would also write his goals. So think about this. Rather than looking at the past and analyzing the wrongs or the woes, the challenges of then or in the current, he's always got his eyes on where I'm headed, where I'm headed, where I'm headed. When you do that, something changes within you. That all of a sudden, you aren't focused on the now because you're not staying here. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. I'm not staying here. Yeah, I'll learn from it. You bet. I'll take that data, that feedback, and I'll move myself forward. But at the end of the day, I'm not staying here. I'm moving forward. Okay. So that's point number one, is you have to have your eyes on where you're headed as opposed to where you've been or even where you're at now. That is the foundational piece, is you actually have to keep your eyes there. Okay. Point number two is that you need to know the data. You need to know your data, because here's what happens. And you are not alone in this, is that when things aren't going quite right, the tendency is to pick up, unplug from what you had committed to do to generate business, and you go try and plug into something else. I mean, I don't know if you're like me, but how many Black Friday offers did you get? Like, I got like between 10 to 15 from one person on my list. I was like, holy crap, shut up. I love you, man, but enough. How tempted are we to say like, oh, it must not be this thing that I've committed to. That must be the solution over there. And so we unplug and we run over there. Now, I'm here to tell you, because I believe I have a superior model for this market, that at times the model that you're subscribed to is actually the wrong model for this particular market, right? Or it's the slower model. But you won't know that unless you, number two, track your numbers. Because if you commit, for example, to say, I'm going to make 10 calls, every 10 contacts, I'm going to have 10 conversations every single day, and I expect that that's going to lead to about 3 appointments, and those 3 appointments are going to lead to about 1 transaction. Okay, let's just say like this, like hypothetical numbers, right? If at least you have some sort of idea and commitment, and you actually track those numbers, then when you are feeling discouraged, you're not where you want to be, you can look back at the numbers and say, was it the thing? Was it the model? Or was it me? And in most cases, we can say, you know what? I committed to 10 and I only got to 5 that day. Or I committed to 10 and I only got to 2 that day. Or I didn't do any, or I only did 6, 7, right? But we don't know that unless we have the data. So I would encourage you to be tracking. Number one, how many reach outs, how many attempts am I gonna make to make contact with people? Okay. How many appointments does that lead to? Okay. Number two. And number three, how many new clients does that lead to? At minimum, those 3, and then track it, especially the top of funnel, especially the proactive reach outs. How many did I commit to and how many did I do? Because then you'll be able to look at the data to say, you know what? I've been consistent for 2 weeks of making these commitments and I'm not getting the appointments. Then at that point, we might say to ourselves, this model maybe needs to be enhanced or tweaked, or I need to maybe even substitute it out for something different. Okay. Now, 2 weeks probably isn't enough data, but you get the point. Without the data, you're flying blindly and you're simply jumping from one silver magic bullet to another. Okay. And that will leave you broke and frustrated. When you know the data, then you have the ability to actually track and know, is it me or is it the model? And if it's the model, then change it out. But if it's you, then that leads us to step number 3. Okay, step number 3 is this. But before I get there, I want to remind you that step number 1 and step number 2 are foundational. Having your eyes on the future and knowing your numbers is foundational. But if you only have those, I'm telling you, it's not enough. Because at the end of the day, those who win are those who execute. Now, step 1 got you in the right mindset to execute. Step number 2, right? Step number 2 got you to where you're executing on the right thing. And now step 3 is you've got to execute. Now, I know you've heard this before, but time blocking could be the most valuable skill set that you ever develop. Because once you have the right model, if you learn how to commit to a certain time of day that you hold sacred. Think about the things in your life that are most sacred to you. Potentially your marriage, potentially a relationship with a child, maybe your faith relationship. Like, would you let somebody come in and take that from you? Heck no, you would not. You would be like, no, that's mine. I'm going to guard that with my life. Here's the reality. Is that if you don't guard that time, you are letting somebody come in and steal your big dream. They're not just stealing 5 minutes. They're not just stealing 20 minutes. They're actually stealing much more than that. And you have to guard it with that kind of offensive standpoint. You have to be aggressive to say like, no, I'm not scheduling anything at this time. We can do that at another time. Now you're not going to talk to people that aggressively, but internally you're saying to yourself, no, I'm not going to let this go, because it's much more than that. It's not just 15 minutes, right? It's much, much more than that. So anyway, I appreciate the feedback I'm getting here online. I think you need more context in that. Yeah, that was a hypothetical number. I appreciate the feedback though. Yes, you might need more contacts than the ones that I shared. However, you get the point, right? Know your numbers, know your data before you just start jumping from thing to thing to thing. Okay. So those are the 3 points. Number 1, keep your eyes on the future through that practice of rewriting your goals at those increments that I shared. Number 2, know your data, know your numbers so that you know if it's you or if it's the thing. And then step number 3 is to guard sacred that holy time that you execute on the thing. If you do that, your bike will be moving forward and you will find yourself looking at molehills as molehills instead of them as mountains. Do you understand? Because again, if you only have one transaction, when that transaction blows up, you are like beside yourself. However, if you have 10, it's like, that's too bad. Let's go get 2 more. Okay. It's all a matter of perspective. And when you have momentum, you don't have the same internal conflict that you do when things get you down. So overcoming adversity is synonymous with getting a momentum. And those 3 steps that I shared with you today will help you to get in momentum. If this has been helpful, I love Big Mo. Yes. If this has been helpful, please leave a comment, whatever platform you're watching on. That will just allow us to get this out to more people. And again, if this is helpful to you and I can be of help to you, please reach out to me on DM. My passion is helping real estate agents and real estate industry professionals get unstuck so that they can grow their business. So if that's you and you want to have a quick conversation about what that looks like so that you don't stay stuck, you don't stay stuck in adversity, but you get momentum, let's talk. Reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. My final request, you know what it is. Go think bigger.